Hello and welcome to another community tutorial by Israel from Easy Academy. So in this particular tutorial, I'm going to be taking a look at something that is very important to the Apache Kafka community. And this is going to be about how you can validate Apache Kafka release candidates before they are released. And this will allow the community to vote on artifacts that are going to be released and probably detect issues with those artifacts and help to improve the quality of the product as we release new versions of Apache Kafka. So I'm going to cover certain things in this particular video. The first thing is why this is important for us to do this. Then we're going to cover what capabilities are available today in the tool that has been created. Then we're going to talk about some of the upcoming capabilities that we're looking to add to this particular resource. Then we're going to walk you through the different steps of how you can validate the release candidates before casting your vote in the process, and then how you can share feedback, and then how you can also contribute. So let's get started. So this is important because as part of Kafka 9861, there is a process that I created a ticket about how to help other people to get involved in the community to validate the release candidates before those candidates are released. So this is basically every time there's a new release that is coming up, the release manager would go ahead and create artifacts based on the version control system. And then once those artifacts have been created, they are signed and then uploaded to a particular URL where community members can download, and also committers and PMC members can download, and they can run those validations and they can go ahead and vote if they think that the quality is good enough for it to be released. So let's take a look at the particular Jira item. So this is the Jira item 9861 where this was proposed. So this happened around I think about 1 or 2 years ago, and it took a while to get started with working on this, but eventually I was able to find some time to work on this, and this work was inspired by Eric Lunde. So he created a tool that allowed me to, for the first time, participate in validating the release candidates at that time. So this was for the Apache Kafka 2.2 release. So after that, I created this repository, and then I was able to add some tools that allows you to validate your release candidates before you cast your votes. So that's a brief history as to why this was done, basically to enable the community to participate in the process of verifying the quality of the release candidate before those candidates are approved and voted upon. So what's available right now is what we're going to cover next. So in terms of what's available, we have the ability for us to validate the hash. We also can check the GPG keys that we use to sign these particular artifacts. We can verify the source code by running unit tests and running all the tests that are required to check the source. We can also verify the site documentation. So this is the website that has the documentation for the project. And then another thing that was added was the ability to run clusters, either in Zookeeper mode, which I'm calling legacy mode, and then the craft mode, which is without Zookeeper. So those are, that's what is available at the current moment. So in terms of features that we can verify today, that's what's possible. And then what's coming soon is the ability to be able to verify the Java docs in an automated way by bringing that locally instead of having to view that remotely. So this particular deployment is for you to download everything to your local environment, run it using Docker, and you should be good to go once the verification is complete. So now that we have covered why this was done, we have also covered what is possible in the tool for you to verify and what's coming up in upcoming releases of this particular utility or resource. Let's take a look at how you can actually verify the release candidate before you go ahead and vote for it once you have approved the quality. So the first thing is going to be the verification of hashes. So to do so, I have a command here that allows us to do that. So we'll go ahead and pretty much download. So I'm going to scroll in here so that you can see. We're going to go ahead and get the URL of the repo, this particular repo. And then once you get this repo, you can clone it to your local environment. And then once that is done, you can navigate to the folder. So to do that, I'm going to put the URL of this repo in the description. So if you cannot read it clearly, you can see it in the description, and then you can navigate, to the repository and then click on the code and then copy the SSH URL so that you can clone it to your local environment. So the first thing is for us to get this and then clone it and navigate to that folder. Once we navigate to the folder, then we can take a look at the artifact validation folder. So let's take a look at how that works. In this particular setup here, I have it available in my local environment already. So I have already cloned it into my local environment. I just have to navigate to the artifact validation. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to verify the cryptographic hash of the artifacts, and then also verify the signatures. So to check that step, let's go back to our outline and see. So we're going to verify the hash as the first thing we're going to do. So to do that, I'm going to navigate to this folder. Then I am going to build the Docker release version. Now this is very specific to the artifact that you're trying to build. So if you take a look at the artifact, so let me open my editor so that we can take a look at that. So if we go into artifact validation, this is the Dockerfile that contains everything for artifact validation. So you see all the different things that are inside. I have specified my Apache Kafka project version, the Scala version that I'm going to use, and then the URL for that particular release candidate. So these are the things you need to pay attention to. And then also make sure that when you're building your local Docker images, you use a URL that indicates what you're building, as well as the specific version and release candidate you're building. Because if you have multiple things going on, you may be verifying Apache Kafka 3.0, Apache Kafka 2.8.1, and all these other things going on. You may have conflicts if you don't specify the tags so that is loaded properly, because that is going to be used inside the Docker Compose file to load the specific image. So if you don't specify the exact version number, you may have conflicts that is very difficult for you to troubleshoot. So once we have specified all those settings, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually build the Dockerfile. So to build the Dockerfile, we're going to go ahead and navigate to the artifact validation folder, and then we're going to run that command. So running that command may take a few about 1 or 2 minutes, but it's going to go ahead and build the particular Docker image that we need for our validation. And then when that is fully done, then the Docker image should be available for me locally. One thing I want to make sure is that when you're running your Docker version, your Docker environment, make sure that you have enough resources. So for me, I would need about at least 2 CPUs, and I would say about 4 gigs of memory to make it work, but I've allowed enough memory here so that I can go ahead and run this successfully. So once this image is done building, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and load the Docker Compose file, and then enter the validator container and run our validations, which will allow us to verify the signatures, verify the hash, and then also verify the source code. So once the image is done building, I'm going to go ahead and power up my Docker Compose. Once that is done, I get into the image, and then we can run all these commands. And then when it's done, I can use this command to shut down the Docker Compose instance, and all the containers will be destroyed. And then we're going to be ready to move on to the next step. So let's take a look at this. This is still building. It may take up to 2 minutes, but once this is done, we should be able to now proceed to use this container to do our validation. So it is almost done. While that is going on, let me open a new tab that I will use to get into the container once I have the Docker Compose powered up. So when the container is done building, I'm going to need to get into the Docker Compose location for us to get started with that. So this is still in progress. So it looks like we are almost done. It's downloading the Scala binaries, and it's downloading the Gradle binaries right now. And in a few minutes, we should be able to get in and start our validation. All right. So we are at the last step right now, and that particular image has been done. So if we take a look at the Docker images, we should be able to see that particular image, but we don't need to do that. So now that we're done, we're going to go into the compose folder, and then we're going to run this Docker compose up command. So running this would power up the validator, and then in a different tab, I can go ahead and run this particular command to get into the image so that we can initiate our validation process. So right now I am inside the Docker image. Once I'm done, I can exit and then run this Docker compose down command to shut everything down. So let's go ahead and verify the signatures for the 2.8.1 RC1, the second release candidate. So doing this allows us to do that. So now this is downloading the artifacts in real time from the URL that was specified. And then if this was signed by David, and this is David's fingerprint for his key, and then as you can see, the same fingerprint is used to sign all the artifacts that we have downloaded. So with this, we can conclude that this was signed by the right person. So we have verified the signatures. Then now we can verify the hash. So to do that, I simply run this command, and then that would go ahead and download the artifacts again from scratch, and then verify that the MD5, the SHA1, and the SHA512 hash are correct. So as you can see here, the hash, is a match in everything. So that is done. Now we can move ahead and verify the source. So what this does is it builds. If we take a look at the verify artifacts script, it is running the source jar Gradle command. It's running the Java doc, the Scala doc, unit test, and integration test, and all those tests that we need. If you need to modify this to either reduce the number of tests or expand, you can do so to do your verification. So this is very customizable. So to do that, all you have to do is to enter the verify artifacts script, and then either expand or contract that list of tests or verifications, and that should do it. So now if we run this verify source command, it's going to download the source again, and once the source has been downloaded, it would unzip, expand the tarball, and then it's going to start running all these different tests to verify it. So that may take a couple of minutes to do, so we're not going to wait for all of this to complete, but that is how you verify. That is pretty much how you verify the hash, the signatures, and run all those integration and unit tests on the source code. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop this so that I can move on to the next verification. So now that we have demonstrated how to do all of this, the next thing now is for us to do the docs validation. So this is very important, because when you go to the Apache Kafka repository, you see all these different folders. So this is where all the documentations for the Apache Kafka website is hosted. But now what we want to do is want to verify that before a particular release candidate is released, the documentation for that release candidate is up to par. So I'm going to go back to the root folder and then navigate to the docs validation folder. So let's shut this down. Okay, we're stopping the validator now so that we can go ahead and do the documentation. So this is stopping, I believe. Okay, so now to make sure that everything is fully removed, we're gonna, all right, that clears up everything. Then now we're gonna go back to the main folder and then go into the docs validation folder. So once I'm in here, I am inside the docs validation. So I want to build my Docker Compose, my Docker image now that I'm going to be using inside my Docker Compose. So this is building the new image. That may take a while, and then similarly I will go ahead and enter the Compose folder and run Docker Compose up. Once my image is successfully built, so inside the Compose folder I can run Docker Compose up, and that kicks off the container for me. Now if I need to enter the container, I can use this to enter the container, but I don't need to do that. So now I just want to show you how I can open this new link, and the website is running in my local environment. So this is now working for the 3.0 release, the 2.8 release, and then the 2.7. So all the previous releases, are fully available for me to browse and verify. So I can take a look at any portion of the documentation and verify that what has been added or what needs to be there is present. So the way this works is that it goes into the code, and it opens up if we take a look at the docs validation inside the Dockerfile, it checks out the remote repository as side docs, and then it runs a local Apache instance, and then the Apache instance uses this config file to configure the local environment for you to load that particular website for it to function properly. So that's pretty much how you verify that. Now that we're done with documentation validation, the next thing is the cluster validation. So to do the cluster validation is very similar. You enter the cluster validation folder after we have shut down all the other things. So let's kill this. So once we're done with this, we're gonna go ahead and build three Docker images. So we're gonna build the base Docker image, and then we can build the broker, the connect, and the zookeeper images. So this allows us to build those images. We run this command, and this should build the base image. And then subsequently, we're gonna build the zookeeper image. Then we're gonna build the Kafka broker images. Then we're gonna build the Kafka connect images. And then when that is done, we can now navigate into the Docker Compose folders and then run it in legacy mode using the steps that are outlined here. So this should allow you to verify that everything is working, and you can add extra commands if you want to. When that is done, we shut everything down, then we come back, we run it in craft mode, meaning without zookeeper, and you can use these commands here to verify it. And then when that is done, we can also run it in a multi-cluster setup using the commands available here to power up the environment, and then using these commands to verify that the cluster is working. So that summarizes pretty much everything that we need to know about this particular utility. So we covered how to verify the hash, the GPG keys, the PGP keys, the source code, the site documentation, running the cluster in craft mode without Zookeeper, and then running the cluster in legacy mode with Zookeeper. So I hope this tool is useful to you and you can use it to verify that your release candidate is up to speed, and it will allow you to vote confidently before a particular release candidate is approved for the community to download and use. So thank you very much for your time, and if you have any questions and if you would like to contribute, you can open additional Jira issues on how to improve this particular utility, and you can send in a pull request to this repo. I'm going to be discussing soon how to include this in the actual Apache Kafka repository, so that future validations of upcoming release candidates will be using this utility and enable the entire community to participate fully. And this will help us to have more confidence because more people are going to be able to use this tool to participate. Thank you very much, and you can reach out to me on Twitter, GitHub, or YouTube at this particular handle. I thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to hearing back from you. Thank you.